Hello War of the Visions fans, I'm Jackie Fox, and I'm excited to announce that last week, yesterday as I'm recording this, I came in third place in Arena, just barely, just shy. There are definitely things I could have done, and I'll talk about them in this video, to come in either second or first, but it was a really stiff competition. Reek and Ninja also, we kind of trained together for this and tested some teams against each other. I got him consistent against one of my teams so that he could stay in this, but he tapped out a little early and came in 10th. MRD also came in the top 10, and I think there was another person from one of our guilds. Not to mention, I mean, there's probably a bunch, honestly, a bunch of Empire guilds in here that I'm just not super present of mind about, but in this video, I'm going to be showing you the excitement of Sunday night in Arena, and we're going to start really early in the night. Reek and Ninja has been doing well most of the day. You can see him at 89,000, but just ahead of him is JB79. So I've got my team set up with a slow Soddly start in the center so that he's going to get his buffs across the party, but this is still going to be a tough fight. It is close to a mirror match, and really the thing that's going to change is that they have more magical damage and maybe a little bit more durability in some ways than my Ashen Mont does through their Fire Wizard. However, on the other hand, I am, if you've watched my Silent Night video, running my Mont at 80 Faith, which is going to give him a really good chance of landing Silence on probably both of these characters. I mean, actually all of them, really. I don't think any of them necessarily have a lot of silence resistance. It would kind of make sense if one of them was running Chariot, which would give them 25% resistance. Exia's LB here is going to give me some fire resistance to help me with the Flame Wizard, but that's not the hugest help in this fight. They're lining up first and doing damage first, and that's honestly usually good because I can get them to pour out some of their higher damage attacks and kind of get those wasted early while I only have one unit forward. Whereas hopefully I'm coming in to attack them and I'm always going to be able to attack 1, 2, or even 3 characters. So my first attack lining up, I'm getting Soddly's LB off, and I am getting that follow-up hit on every character on the field now. But we're not doing a whole lot more than that, and Exia has put us to sleep, which is not good. Probably my biggest DPS is sleeping on the job, but my secondary DPS is coming in and using his LB to slap some serious damage onto the field here. But Soddly is down. We're still slapping damage, and we got the silence here on Exia and Soddly. So the entire power couple is now silenced, and I really only have to worry about dealing with Flame Wizard at this point. And he's hitting pretty hard, but none of them have really touched my water unit. They are pretty close to death. Soddly's asleep now to make matters even worse. And now they're gone. So I just have to deal with the Flame Wizard at this point, and he's going to have a lot of trouble with Exia. He might be able to get through Mont here, but not if he gets healed up like that. And look at that, I actually managed to finish this fight with almost all of my health on 2 units, which is giving me a decent bonus against this team. However, I wanted to check this team again because, I mean, I've got to fight them multiple times, but I wanted to actually watch this particular video just to see if anything happened differently, because honestly, silencing probably their 2 best characters, or at least maybe they're 2 best characters into me, since I have the fire resistance and Flame Wizard isn't as big of a problem for me, is probably the best case scenario for a single 2-fold Reaver, so I did get pretty lucky on that. On the other side of things, I also got unlucky a number of times in here. Soddly probably could have survived until the end, or at least longer, had he not been put to sleep. That was a pretty impactful issue for this particular fight. But once again, you're seeing Soddly and Exia laying into my Soddly, breaking down all of his kind of initial barriers, and also taking away most of his HP, but importantly, not all of it, and giving him kind of the room to be able to tick his HP back up a bit here, although I think he's been hit with a pretty big healing power down from Exia. He is now asleep again, so just like the last match, I'm Gonna be having some trouble here with him being asleep, but just like last match, Mont is coming in and getting his follow-up attacks in. But now Mont's asleep and Soddly's dead. Last time this happened, Mont didn't fall asleep, so we're in a considerably worse position. Also, he is taking a lot of damage very fast from their entire team. Waking him up, the skill that wakes him from sleep, or anyone from sleep, is going to do an extra 50% damage. So that's also kind of a delayed damage steroid in a way, which is something that kind of, in a way, it's like a very time-agey thing, because you're kind of putting extra damage into the future by putting this character to sleep, because when they wake up, they're going to take more damage from that hit. It's interesting. It's kind of the inverse in some ways. Of like putting a threshold heal on a character. But in this fight, we have managed to keep Mont alive long enough to get Soddly silenced, but he's down now, and Exia is just taking a nap in the back row. JB's got both Soddly and Exia awake, and we pretty much only have our regen to save our butts here. And it looks like we're down to courage and just down in general. Although we did make that fight pretty close. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just experiment with my trust runes and play around with people's resistances to try to see if I can build up specific resistances to a lot of different meta things. I can probably afford to avoid silence, at least for the moment, because for whatever reason, not enough of you out there have watched my Silent Night video, so you don't know how good you could have it with your Ashen Mont, much like I'm going to show you, especially in this next fight after I get this stuff fixed. Because, especially in a lot of brawler meta type fights like this, where you have 3 DPSs that all heal themselves as you do damage, and the HP totals are swinging back and forth every turn, being able to turn off somebody's ability to effectively take their turns, be that through Berserk, which isn't the ideal way to do this, because they're still going to do some damage, and a lot of newer characters are decent on their basic attacks. But also silence, disable, stop. There's a lot of really impactful statuses that if you're going to be hanging around for a while, if this match is going to be going long anyways, that's just going to allow me to keep rolling the dice on these statuses over and over and over again. And even if I don't have the kind of stellar odds that Ashen Mont has to silence people, maybe my odds, I think the base rate for Exia's Meteor Blast, or Arcane Shelter, or whatever it was, whichever one has a chance to sleep, is like 40%, so that's going to be lower than Mont, but she also has higher faith, so it's a little bit of a wash. She has pretty good chances of sleeping people, and a lot of that, more than half of it, can be negated through even a 25% resistance. So really, putting sleep on my trust runes here was probably the biggest one for this, because that was the status that was holding us back the most. But as you see from what I just showed you, I also built things a little bit differently for different characters, because different characters have different needs. Ashen Mont doesn't care if he's silenced whatsoever, is completely irrelevant to him. Whereas for Soddly and Exia, the only reason that I want 75% curse resistance is to be able to negate Sephiroth. And if I'm not facing off against Sephiroth teams, and they come and go, this was a fire bonus week, but if I'm not necessarily facing off against them, it's not as big a deal that I have that. So now that I've got that set up properly, let's see how much this match changes up now that I have proper status resistance and my opponents do not. This was the point where Soddly was sleeping before. In the last fight, this is where Mont was sleeping. And you can see, not going to sleep, even if he was woken up before he gets his turn, the fact that he didn't go to sleep is enabling him to deal with their successive damage a lot better, and is allowing us to catch back up and even get ahead in the unit race. And that was actually probably the best and most consistent win that we've had. Oh, wait, he's not quite dead yet. This is probably the best finish that we've had so far. Especially if Ashenmont just heals back up a little bit, and it's not impossible. Oh, nope. We've got an evocation. So not our best finish, but it was pretty good, and the finish that was better was incredibly lucky. I would say that this is now the baseline, and if your baseline worst case scenario against someone still works out pretty well, then you're only going to do better when you get those sleeps. You're only going to do better when you get those silences. But I was able to consistently beat JB's team for a while, and then eventually he stopped playing for the night, and I had to wait for another team to take the top place. This is where curse resistance started to get more important for basically any character in the game except for well, okay. The only one, curse resistance, there's a 50 base curse resistance for both Exia and Sodley, and that's enough to reduce Sephiroth's base chances of curse down to 17%, which means that he has a pretty low chance of actually cursing one of my characters. But if he hits multiple characters with his cursing skill, you know, he starts to get closer to kind of a coin flip chance of cursing somebody, and that's not particularly fun for me. So we're seeing there's a couple of real issues going into Summer Resnick for me. Sephiroth I'm not too afraid of, and Flame Wizard I'm definitely not very afraid of. And again, with Exia's LB, I'm getting up to a lot of fire resistance, in part because both of my other units have good general elemental resistances, and Sodley himself builds up his all elemental resistance, which will stack in with his with the fire resistance from Exia. So they're all good at resisting fire. My actual biggest issue with this team is Summer Resnick, because she can remove my follow-up hits, and she can give all of them the ability to do that with the right buff setup, which is just holds my damage back for the most part in a way that can be pretty unhelpful for me. But also that vision card heal, and like, it is kind of limited, the characters that can use it, but I do want to point out, we just recently had Nico announced as a new book character over on the JP side just this morning, and he would be able to use that heal that gives the CT up and I think like AoE resistance or whatever that was. That's just really powerful because, again, it kind of hits the reset button on your entire team. Suddenly you're all healed and you have turns, which is sometimes even more than enough with a lot of these self-healing type characters. She's really trying to keep people alive. Exia's like, no. You won't die. Yes, you will. But, as you can see, they can't really do much of anything about Exia except for stall her. And unfortunately, in this particular case, that was enough. I have this weird filmmaking curse when it comes to War of the Visions content. I can beat a team 10 times in a row, go to record my 11th match, and lose it every damn time. I don't know how this happens. It's pretty ridiculous because both me and Riken Ninja, because we were talking about this at the time, both of us built up a 15 to 25, or like a 15 to 20 streak, mostly just using this guy while he was in first place, because he got way out in front of us. So we had a 1.5 rate modifier for a long time. Like, he was the first person of the night to actually push. If you go back, scroll back into the video and look back to where I was looking at the ranks when JB was up top, you'll notice that between number 1 and number 5, the difference is around 1,000 points. There's only, that's like 1 to 2 victories is the difference between first and fifth, because everybody is just getting one win ahead of everybody else, right? Just a couple of 100 points in the lead of everyone else, and that's kind of how it stacked up for a little while, because no one was really pushing forward. This guy pushed forward like 5,000 or 6,000 points. He didn't immediately stop playing at that point, but he did stop playing a little while after that. That was kind of his last run of the night. And he really provided the fuel that both Riken Ninja and my team needed to be able to push through and get to number 1 and number 2. Speaking of which, Riken Ninja, who ended up in 10th, was actually first place until about 1:30 at night, Although, at this point in the night, if I remember correctly, this is still about 10:30 p.m., about 4.5 hours left in the arena week. It's a shame that Sephiroth doesn't have magical skills, because I feel like I silence him 2 or 3 times every fight. As you can see from this one, and this was something that I kind of theorized, but I never really looked at the numbers hard enough to really figure it out. But yeah, it seems like the biggest factor in determining how many base points you get for a win is based on how much HP you have left, or your team has left at the end of the fight. And I finished that with full health on everyone, and even without any winning streak bonus, but a good rate bonus, I ended up with 900 points. So that could easily go over 1,000. So having a team that can heal itself back incredibly well is actually kind of a cheat code to getting more points, especially if you find a team that you beat incredibly well and incredibly consistently. And at this point, I think Wiz had for a while been using a team that I could beat that had Shurika on it, and that team actually shows up in the very end of the previous video. But by this point, Wiz had shifted to a Fire and Wind team that I do okay against, but it had more focus on Earth resistance on Shurika, and again, as I've said, that's really the thing that determines whether I can beat you or not. If your Shurika doesn't have any focus on Earth resistance, and the team isn't set up like around her and there aren't other wind units, I can probably beat that. But if it's a lonely Shurika who is supported well by Earth resistance, like off of vision cards or accessories or whatever, or espers, then I'm going to have a lot of trouble with her. And this is going to be an example of that, but I wanted to try Wiz since that team was number 1. And I don't think I'd actually tested against this team at that point. So, one of the other disadvantages I have here, one of the things that makes this a little bit worse, or maybe in some ways equally bad, at least from a silence perspective, kind of equally bad to the Sephiroth version of this team that we just saw, is that it's going to be impossible for my Mont to silence Shurika no matter what the conditions are. But I do still probably have a good chance of silencing anyone else on the team, at least while I have my AP Auto Restore up. Except that I don't have my AP Auto Restore up, because they're also running a pretty good countermeasure. This is another way that you could countermeasure the Silent Knight concept, or at least Ashen Mont's silence capabilities, is the Blade Stream. Again, I've been talking about how good Veritas of the Heavens TMR is for a long time, and this is a really good example of why. Now, you can see we make it pretty hard in a lot of ways for Shurika to be able to easily take us down, but we aren't doing very much damage to her. If we can stay alive, and that's not as hard as it might seem, we can keep doing damage to her, break away her resistances, and eventually really take her out. But if she has good resistances like this, we just can't do the damage fast enough, and that's kind of what you're going to see. We can, in some ways, hang for a little bit, but yeah, not very well. Of course, Axia over here is like, well, I can put her to sleep. She's not that big of a problem to me. Mont wakes her back up and also gets the KO on Resnick. But both of them are kind of locked back by Immobilize. Again, this isn't that big of an issue for Axia, and she manages to jump in on the turn order and just put Shurika to sleep before she could get another turn. Oh my god, hold up, wait. I told y'all this was going to be a loss at the beginning of this fight. I was thinking to myself, I don't remember this being a loss when I recorded it, but I don't remember winning to this fight, and honestly, it's probably not consistent. I'm probably about to do one more round against this, and you're going to see me lose, or at least skip to a loss, but damn! Axia just got the perfect timing to invalidate Shurika, just invalidate her whole life. And you've already seen how well she tends to hold up against other, like, you know, if my 2 Earth units get taken down versus a fire team, she can kind of 1v3 them. Or at least 1v2 them pretty effectively. I shifted a couple of my vision cards around there, so I'm going to see if this helps make me more consistent versus this team. One of the things that I'm focusing more on in this particular build, I moved Sodley's vision card to the front. It's only going to work for him and Mont. It's not going to work for Exia, which is unfortunate. But I was swapping out Dark Golem, who also doesn't work for Exia anyways and is AoE based. What this is going to mean is that, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for Flame Wizard, my 2 Earth characters here are going to be a bit weaker to AoE damage, but hopefully making them a lot stronger against single target damage will help them endure Shurika long enough to maybe compete. But again, I don't think we do damage to her fast enough to be able to do this. This is probably a stupid experiment on my part, but I also liked the added bonuses, and I really probably should have been running for the unforeseen future in first slot on Sodley just for that reason alone. If not, only because there's a lot of follow-up damage in the meta, so having single target resistance is pretty impactful. So I just kind of wanted to test it again, but I don't like my chances still. But hey, maybe Exia will come up here and just stomp them again. If we can hold out and kind of beat them down for long enough, the chances of her doing that well go up a lot. Okay, I mean, we're definitely hitting her. And we might have activated that follow-up damage late enough in the game that they can't remove it. I mean, he definitely didn't have the buff applied to him after he was revived, so he can't do it. Shurika might be able to, but that's getting less and less likely with every turn. No, she did still have pursuit removal. Dang! I was hoping getting that LB in there late enough might be able to counter that effect, but that's coming again from the opening buffs for Summer Resnick, and as you can see, it's pretty strong against this team. Also, just not landing a sleep here on Shurika instead of landing them back to back, you can see how big of a difference that is. I definitely felt like the last match felt like more of a fluke, but yeah, this absolutely confirms it. So there's a similar team, though, that just got into number 1. This is maybe a half hour later. Looking at the Earth resistance, though, there's not a ton of Earth resistance on this team. Well, at least, oh no, that was Dialdo. Okay, 64%? You know what? I've seen higher, but yikes. That is kind of unfortunate. It is also going to trigger Exia to use Meteor Blast more often, I think, because that's her missile skill, and I did not see good missile resistance here. Okay, getting set up. If I remember correctly, Dialdo is good at unit attack resistance. So, like an older version of Strategist Oldoa, he's probably going to be pretty good at taking follow-up damage. I'm not exactly sure who he's beating, though, necessarily, to get to number 1. I think at this point it might be Riken Ninja, because this is probably 2 a.m., somewhere in that ballpark. There are occasionally timestamps when I'll kind of pull down and show you the time from the top of my screen interface, but yeah, this was pretty late, and they had gotten up there as one of the last teams. I think they might have even finished in like 4th or 5th place, because we are getting pretty close to the end of the night by this point. The meta will still probably undergo a couple more evolutions before we get to the top, or at least the meta of can you beat number 1 is going to change a couple of times. But we got the sleep on Shurika, so that's a pretty promising sign. We also have all of our characters at full health at this point. The biggest threat to them is down. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. We didn't do a ton of damage on that, but we did bring Shurika pretty low, and that should be able to finish her off. Did she have any? No, she didn't have any way of mitigating death. So now we're focused on their tank fully. He's blinded, which is kind of irrelevant. He also has a magic shield now, which sucks for us, especially at full health. But we did put their healer to sleep, so if we could just focus on the tank instead of hitting her, or at least do something to her that knocks her out when we hit her. Oh, okay, that was close. Oh, silence! Okay, that'll do it. I don't care if she's awake if she's silenced. Yes! Okay, that was a great win. From memory... Yeah, this is about 2 a.m. Yep. I believe we're going on 3 a.m. at this point. Yes, from memory, this wasn't the most consistent matchup for me, though. This is one of the reasons why my score didn't go too much higher. I also shifted back to AoE resistance over unit attack resistance, it looks like, around this time. And I'm also trying to think about like how I might be able to use other espers for different resistances without messing up my speed. This is probably going to require me to change both espers and equipment if I want to do that, but this is what I used for most of the night. I am trying to make sure that there aren't any like job VCs that work for this team that I'm just not thinking about. Just anything that I haven't considered yet that would really work. Like, how could I get AoE resistance specifically across this team? Like, this would be good for 2 devout units. Sure, if I had 2 devouts on my team, I need to keep that in mind for this week, actually. That would be a really good AoE resistance card, especially if I could make that 3rd unit one of those others. But unfortunately, at least from the cards that I've pulled, I'm not really seeing anything that really screams, yeah, this is what your team needs, Jackie. Still going with the unit attack resistance vibe, I wanted a unit attack resistance card that would actually work for Exia too. There's some disadvantages to using a physical card on a magical unit. In fact, his overall magic fell a little bit because of this. Got to 35 unit resist for Exia, though. Hopefully that'll make her a little bit more durable into units like Shurika. Because honestly, she's my best anti-Shurika mechanism right now. She's the one who can brawl with Shurika the best and actually take her out, or even like make her look silly if she lands her statuses right, like we did in one of those first fights. Because we definitely can't silence her with Mont, but that doesn't mean we can't put her to sleep multiple times. And if we're waking her up with magic damage, she's not very resistant to that, so that's probably going to do a lot of damage and maybe even take her out of the fight a lot quicker. So let's see how this goes with a little bit more a little bit less unit resistance, honestly, on my Earth units by about 4, but 20 more for Exia. So hopefully that's helpful for her. Oh, I have never seen him use Bradley's TMR. Whoa! And the haste gave him enough extra CT to give him the next turn as well. And then he just unleashed hell upon them. It didn't do much damage to Shurika, but again, her earth resistance has been really rough here. Oh, so rough. No, she just destroyed my earth units. If I don't land sleep, yeah. No, I think this match is over. Damn, I had such high hopes for this team. Wait, maybe I shouldn't count her out yet. They're not doing a great job of doing damage to her. You know, that tank healer DPS compositions right now can be really vulnerable in this type of situation because they just they don't push damage enough. I like to lean more towards pushing damage than sustain, especially in 1v1 formats. A more sustainy team like this makes a lot more sense on defense in guild battle, but they're not usually the best for arena. But you know, I say that as it kicks my ass. I mean, you know, talk all my shit I want about them only having 1 DPS. I only have 1 unit, so maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Okay, so we have another person hitting the top. Their VCs are actually pretty impressive for this team, Glove and Devout. These VCs would also work really well if you were, say, another way to get re-raised might be running Veritas of the Waters. Basically, poor man's Luciel in a lot of ways. But those VCs would also work really well for her. So maybe we'll see them using them maybe a little interchangeably next week. This kind of team certainly has room to go more heavily into water as a way of maybe being able to counter some fire. I don't know how big the fire bonuses are. I think maybe Flame Wizard and Sodley have fallen into the 75% slot, so I'm not sure that we'll see as much of them as maybe Halloween Alaya, who is a lightning unit, who might come in to play with some of the more water teams, some of the Exia teams. Certainly gives her things to do, even as a 70 cost unit in Arena. So she's an interesting bonus unit as well. And I'm going to try, definitely a lot more casually, but I'm going to try to get her to 140 at the very least and kind of see what that can do in Arena 2. But right now, my focus is still on doing the best I can with this Exia and Sodley team. And a big part of the reason for that is after I got my medals today for coming in top 10, I was able to take Veritas of the Frost to 140 and get him to his first reincarnation. Counting the dailies for this week and the bonus at the end of the week, if I can get in the top 10 this week as well, I should be able to get him to 8 reincarnations and be a total of 26, which is just 6 days away from being able to fully reincarnate him. And then, if I'm not entirely burnt out on Arena, maybe put a little bit of moderate effort into picking up some more medals to craft his unique sword, which I think is coming up with Veritas of the Light, who, since we just got a Veritas announced for JP, is probably coming out very soon for us. And hopefully, just in time, as she's just in time for Limited, she'll be in the class match rewards. So everybody, don't forget to do class match. It is possible, though, I mean, I wouldn't guarantee it. Sometimes Gumi kind of goes the less generous route on this, but it's possible that there are Veritas of the Light rewards for that. I don't know. Maybe look at the reward schedule. I don't think they would necessarily add it to it, but I didn't expect to get Veritas of the Bolt during Guild Battle on her first week, but they made that happen. Even though I don't think that's the way it happened in JP. But after all this time, I have finally managed to get myself back into first place. Rican Ninja at this point has fallen to 4th. So we know that there's 6 people who are going to pass him probably within like the next hour. I think this is probably 3 a.m. Let me just check the timestamps here. Yeah, this is about 3:30, I want to say. And here's one of my mistakes. So let me talk a little bit about my mistakes here. I maybe could have waited a little bit to get out in front, because what ended up happening was the person who is in first place right now, Shogun from Hydra, was using not the best team, honestly. Not a very good team. Overall, generally speaking. 2 wind tanks and Shurika. While that is not a good team versus most matchups, when the number 1 player is playing 2 earth units and a water unit, it's pretty great. And when you're playing at 3 a.m., if you can build a lead of 5 or 10,000 points, which is exactly what they did by using me to leapfrog themselves sufficiently into first, they got so far ahead that they thought they could stop playing around 3:30. But like one of my commenters and one of my viewers, also I'm leaving this load screen in just to show you how unbearably long these feel at 3:30 in the morning when you're like, how many more fights can I get in? How much are these load screens going to limit my ability to actually score points? Anyways, as one of my commenters and viewers, Realm, was saying, also the person that I'm matching up against in this, and kind of using to help get my points up, you gotta keep fighting until 4 a.m. That's just how you do it. That's how you make it. And we're going to be able to watch in real time as Realm gets closer and closer to first place. And I believe that this fight, I believe this is the last fight I'm going to do for the night. This is my last orb. Oh, no, this is my second to last orb, I think. I guess I put in a couple of skips, because when you watch the skips, you can kind of track Realm's progress as well by seeing what our scores are. So it's the last 15 or 20 minutes. Realm is getting really close to Shogun, and I only have 1 restore left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until the very last minute. I'm going to let Realm get to first place, because I think he can do it, or at least really close to second, or at least close to a 1.5 rate modifier, because if I've only got 1 last fight in me, I want to make it count. I want to make it count, damn it. Okay. I may have gotten a little bit prematurely excited there. It looks like I have a couple more matches before the end of the night. But my last is going to be against Realm. That's my strategy. And honestly, maybe I shouldn't have done these matches. Maybe I should have waited until closer to 3:45, as Realm is picking up like a 1.25, 1.3 bonus over me, and did these fights at that bonus instead of reaching below me in the ranks and getting like a 0.8 modifier. I could have got maybe twice the points, and while I don't think that would have allowed me to beat Realm, and I don't think it would have allowed me to beat Shogun if he had continued to play until 4 a.m., it's probably enough that I could have come in second place in, considering that Shogun had stopped scoring points. I think I could have overtaken him with more optimized play, but like I said, I'm an excitable fox. So I'm not really good at being patient, honestly. And as you can tell from like this last part of the voiceover, I'm trying to spin that last orb already. You know what I mean? I am already ready for it. So just imagine me at 3 a.m. with like 4 or 5 left. I'm just itching to get rid of them, you know? But there's also kind of that factor of wanting to play them at the last possible second as your opponents are at their best possible scores so that you get the best possible rate modifier, but also not running out of time and having orbs left, because that's just points you're not going to get. You know, trying to ride that line can be hard, especially in this meta, because a lot of matchups can take a long time to play out, and that can make your load times take a long time to play out. So it can be really, really tense waiting for something to happen, waiting to load into a fight, to hit that skip button as soon as you possibly can. Anyways, we've seen me fire enough times. I'm not going to have you watch that. But here's the point where Shogun is really starting to get in the lead. This other person is competing. Realm is kind of holding back a little bit. And again, I probably shouldn't have done this fight. I should have waited. But the thing is, Hindsight is 20/20. I didn't know at that point that Realm was really going to go for it, except that they told me that's how they play in my comments. Okay, maybe this is on me. Maybe I should have waited a little bit later. But as you can see, it's getting pretty late into the night. I have managed to get myself into second place, which I guess means that... Oh no, because Realm's still coming up. Like, you can see it here. I may be scoring points, but Realm is definitely coming for both me and Shogun. Now, since I'm here beating Realm, that means Realm's not beating me. Realm's got to be beating Shogun. So this hyper-specialized win team that was basically designed just to kick my butt ends up being defensively weak enough that somebody can come up. If there had been a team that Realm couldn't deal with in first place, I might have been able to get away with second as well. But again, it was a very specialized team that ended up in first. And you can see there's only 3,000 points between each of us now. So he's definitely picking back up in there. But it's not over till it's over, and it's going to keep going. We're at 3:44, 15 minutes till the end. Thank you guys for watching this far. This is Shogun's team. We're going to look at some of their resistances since I have a little bit of time to waste. You know, it had been really tense before this point, just like spamming fights and skips, being afraid I was going to run out of time. But thank you so much for watching this far. Remember to like and subscribe. That is the free-to-play option for YouTube. But if you have a little bit of time or money to spend, check out the link in the description. I have books. I'm an author of fiction. And you can also check out other places that I post on the internet if you have a little bit of time to give. And if you have a little bit of money, you can support this channel and me more generally on Patreon and Ko-fi, either through one-time donations to just maybe help me pull or help me build up some of these new characters so I can show you more things in Arena. I'd certainly be happy to. I mean, it's at a certain point, like, I'm going to have to look into, like, getting Viz just for Arena restores or trying to figure out how to buy Arena potions or something. Because by the time I get Veritas of the Frost fully reincarnated, I'm basically going to be out of those for this account at least. And I should have another week or so of Exia being a bonus from that, but it is what it is. You can see at this point, I have just barely been overcome by Realm. It's 3:49. There's 11 minutes left, and it is so hard for me, even knowing that load times are at worst like 2 minutes. As long as I can load in before stuff's over, I'll be fine. So hard for me to wait until they hit number 1, until just the last minute. I want to say this was like 3:57 or something, just so I barely had time. Oh my gosh. But if you like this content, tell me what you liked about it. Tell me what made this exciting for you. Personally, for me, competing at this level and really having to, like, I mean, it's exciting because the meta is beat number 1, and when number 1 changes, what works changes. And, like, you have to be able to adapt to that on the fly. And I've played this with accounts, and I think the easier way, definitely. You can do stuff like Shogun's doing. If you have enough different types of viable teams, you can just play whatever works. But it's also a special kind of interesting and difficult to do this in the way that I'm doing it, playing with one team, or maybe one team with an alternate unit or so, and just figuring out how to switch your cards, switch your equipment, switch your espers to make that work against a variety of different things. And oh, by the way, like I was pointing out at the beginning of the video, don't forget about those trust runes. They're easier to fix now than ever. And like I was pointing out earlier in this video, especially if you're building a team that is made for long, drawn-out slugfests, there is more and more and more and more opportunities for status to become important and swing the match entirely. And tactics is going to be here soon. People are going to be getting their free 120 Agriuses, a stubborn ice tank who is absolutely going to be modernized to the point where she's going to be hard to take off the map. And while she may not be doing a lot of damage, she has Disable, confusion, and stop, just to name the things that I know of off the top of my head. Probably silence in there somewhere as well, or some shenanigans like that. She's a really impactful unit in terms of status and in terms of durability, if nothing else. And basically everybody's going to have her pretty soon, so this is going to be an important thing to make note of. But also kind of increasing the value of HP restore removal units, or units with high healing power down that can hit multiple targets in a way similar to like Meteor Blast on Exia here, being a pretty good example of that. But Realm is such a competitor. I mean, I should have a pretty huge advantage here, and I'm doing well, but just such a good team that even though I have that advantage, and even though I know that I'm pretty consistent against this team, they are not going to go down without a fight. And since this is definitely my last fight of the night, I might as well just let it play out, and then kind of show you where things went. So, stay tuned for that. But as for me, your host, I'm going to be dipping out, much like the rest of this team basically has dipped out on Lucielle here. But, nope, didn't get the heal in time. But, yeah, with all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Or at the top of Arena, like, come at me, bro.
I shall burn everything and build a new world.